Good morning, everyone. Let me tell you a bit about myself. My name is Wayan Lusi Oktaviana. I'm a college student from Lampung University with student ID 1913023016. I'm from Group 1 with my friend Deka Fitria with student ID 1913023002 and Reni Widi Astuti with student ID 1913023034. We are here today in this video. We'd like to talk to you about chemistry education article review. I have divided my talk into a few sections. The first is abstract and introductions. The second is we'll talk about method of the journal. The third is the result and the discussions of the journal. And finally, I will explain conclusions and some of my opinion about the strength and the weakness of the journal. So let's get started to the number 1. First, before we review the content of the journal, we must write the title and then the author and of course year of publication of the journal. As you can see on the screen, the title of the first journal we review is The Learning Effectivity of Chemistry Experimental Activity in Laboratory Toward the Students' Learning Motivation. It was Luki Unitals work published in 2017. And let's move on to the next. Secondly, we talk about the abstract of the journal. The journal entitled The Learning Effectivity of Chemistry Experimental Activity in Laboratory Towards the Students' Learning Motivations goes directly to the topic of discussion that will be discussed by the author, so that it is easier for the readers to understand this journal. So the abstract from this journal is contain the effectiveness of learning chemistry using practical method in the laboratory. The main study in the study focus on the factor that affect the effectiveness of learning, including internal factor and external factor. The objective of this research are: number 1, learning motivations of high school students in South Tangerang. Number 2, effectiveness of learning chemistry by using laboratories. And number 3, analyzing the contribution of student motivation to learn. And number 4, management of chemistry laboratory at senior high school in South Tangerang. So this research method is a survey method with a quantitative approach to public high school and to private high school in South Tangerang with a sample of 200 students. Explained in the abstract of the journal as well that the activity lab work the laboratory play an important role in supporting chemical learning and give effectiveness in understanding of chemical lesson and to increase the students' interest in learning so that the students' learning motivations become fairly high towards the chemical subject have been taught. So let's move on to the next slide. So the next one is introductions of the journal. The introduction to this journal explains the fact that the current learning process is not yet fully student-centered, which can be seen from the result of the direct observations of the learning process that took place in several schools in South Tangerang. According to the observations from several schools, it showed that students have not been much involved in the learning activities. One of which is because the method often used by teachers is lecture method. Even though in the introduction it is also explained that the learning should be more student-centered, so the student can participate in the learning process, develop the independent way of learning, play a role in the planning, implementations, assessment, and learning process itself. so that the student experience is more prioritizedly in focusing the starting point of learning activities. Teaching by using the experimental method emphasizes the full involvement of students in learning process. Through this research, it's expected to see the effectiveness of the use of tools and chemistry lab material that can motivate the student learning, especially on chemistry subject in school. Teaching by practicum method requires the laboratory equipment and materials to be able to develop student science process skill. With the practicum in lab, the students are expected to be more appreciative and of the process of activity, so that the results obtained from the process is more meaningful and lasts longer in student memory. So that's the laboratory activity as one of teaching and learning strategies that plays a role in supporting and teaching, of course, for learning process of science. So now let's move on to the next slide right now. The next point is the method of the journal. The method used in this research is a descriptive qualitative research approach by investigating circumstances, situations, or events whose results are presented in the form of research reports. Data collection technique used in this research is to conduct questionnaire about student learning motivations by analyzing the questionnaire that use 5 scale, or you can say that Likert scale, with the total sample 200 students in senior high school in South Tangerang. Now let's move on to the next slide. And the next one, I'd like to focus on this chart is the analysis result of students' motivation questionnaire. So that's that number 1, the result of student motivations to practical method in the laboratory show that students in class 11 senior high school South Tangerang have good learning motivations. From the data obtained based on the overall average of student learning motivation at 4 high school South Tangerang, we say that both have percentage obtained of 79%. And number 2, after doing research in the field, then obtain the result of calculation effectiveness of the overall learning process of the questionnaire analysis obtained has a percentage indicator of 87%, which means most of the effectiveness of high school learning process in South Tangerang is very good criteria. Number 3, the student's learning motivation is one of the important components that contribute to the effectiveness of the learning process. Number 4, the motivation's contribution of student learning has a percentage of 87% with very good criteria. This indicator is related to students' interest in laboratory methods that can lead to the students' learning motivations. Number 5, the results show that the indicator of chemistry laboratory requirement in school, more looking for the equipment and materials which are available in the laboratory, is complete and feasible. Have a laborant, a chemical laboratory equipped with fire extinguisher and first aid and laboratory lighting system. Number 6, the effectiveness of learning is one of the influences by the facility owned by the school. Laboratory is one of the facilities that must be owned by schools to support the learning process of science or chemistry. Good laboratory management is expected to meet the students' need to understand the chemistry learning material. So that's the results and discussions in this journal. So let's move on to the next slide. In conclusion, based on the result of research on the effectiveness of learning chemistry experimental in the laboratory towards students' learning motivations in high school in South Tangerang City, can be concluded that in general, the lab activity in laboratory play a role in supporting the learning of chemistry and give effectivity in chemical learning process. That this can be seen from the progress of students in understanding the chemistry lesson in school, and with the activities of chemistry laboratories can encourage student interest in learning so that the students' learning motivation is high enough to this chemistry subject that the teacher does. The constraints that occur in the chemical laboratory activities is the timing of practicum activity in chemical laboratory that are less scheduled and lack of coordinations from various parties to advance the chemical laboratories in South Tangerang City. Before I start, let me tell you about my opinion about the strength and the weakness of the journal. The strength of the journal is the result of the study, so that it is true that if activities in the laboratory play a role in supporting the learning of chemistry and give effectivity in chemical learning process with many positive results from high school that has a good intensity of learning in the laboratory. And then the weakness of the journal is the laboratory takes time to prepare and provide tools and material. In addition to materials that have expired, is also one of the obstacles for the teacher of chemistry subjects. So the application of practical methods in schools has not been done optimally. And the next weakness is, although this research has been pursued maximal, there are still limitations which must be scientifically put forward in this study. Limitations become the basis of the considerations to make conclusions and generalizations this research. The limitations of the research is related to the applications of descriptive quantitative research design. So that's all that I have to say. The next review will be explained by my friends. Please listen carefully. Thank you.
Okay, in this section, I am Deka Fitria from Group 1 can present the results related to the second journal review. The title of the journal is Analysis of Constraint and Innovation of Chemistry Experiment Implementation in High School in Deli Serdang, Indonesia. Volume and page from the journal is volume 12 and page 106 until 115. Years of publish is 2020 and authors is Fatia Namira, Wan Azura, Ayu Miranda, Hamida Tunisa, Saronon Silaban, Retno Dwi Suyanti, and Ayi Darmana. Reviewers is it's me, is Deka Fitria, and my friends is Wayan, Lusi, Oktaviana, and Reni, Widi, Astuti. After that, from the journal there is an abstract. Namely, practical activities play an important role in science education. Through it, students develop a deeper understanding of studying, theoretical concept, skill, utilization of technology and methods from investigation with direct manipulation of related materials. Effective use of laboratories is one of the requirements in learning chemistry, especially in experiment material. However, problems that are often encountered in learning in the laboratory are laboratory management, which includes the procurement process, application process, and the maintenance process. Stage in the research of these are 1. Observation based on national education standards. 2. Observation of chemistry experiments implementation. 3. Observation of constraint and problems laboratory at school. And last is determine alternative solution. The results show that R of chemistry laboratory has suitable with BSNP standard, but the standard of facilities and infrastructure category reference scale or PAP, so less category results. So the settlement by research on the problem is to do a simple practicum that can be done in an open space or using the technology or virtual laboratory. They encourage the students' skill in Industrial 4. Introduction. The Industrial Revolution 4 is a challenge for the education in the world to produce graduates who have the skills to be able to compete for working. Chemistry education is one of the measures that has contributed to producing graduates who have good skills in technology, problem solving, and social interaction abilities. For Suyatna 2019. Experiment in the laboratory plays an important role in the education science. Through it, students develop a deeper understanding of standing theoretical concepts, use of technology, and methods for investigation with direct manipulation of related materials. In learning with the practical method, students will be creative, discover or prove a phenomenon they experience and the concept they are learning. By learning with the experimental method, it can be a place for the creation of the teacher as a learning facilitator so that concepts that students have not understood theoretically can be explored through practicum. From Harifa 2019. Okay, next about methods from the journal. The population selected in the research was all chemistry teachers and students at Senior High School 1 Labuhan Delhi and Senior High School 2 Pertusait 1, Deli Serdang Regency. The sample used in this research was determined using probability technique sampling types of random sampling. And sampling or sample purpose includes 2 chemistry teachers and 64 students were focused on 2 schools. Stage in the research of these are 1. Observation based on national education standards. 2. Observation of chemistry experiment implementation. 3. Observation of constraint and laboratory problem at school. And last is determine alternative solution. Results and discussion is 1. About the condition of building in school laboratory facilities from the observation that has been done regarding of each laboratory. Data show that extensive laboratory in each school already proper based on national education standards. The condition of the buildings of each high school in Deli Serdang Regency can be seen in Table 1. In Table 1 from Senior High School 1 Labuhan Delhi, laboratory area for school is 16 by X square meters, and from Senior High School to Pertusait 1, laboratory area for school is 15 by X square meters. Based on the National Education Standard, the chemical laboratory area for school is 15 by 8 square meters, with a minimum ratio of 2.42 square meters per participant, 1 teacher, 1 laboratory, and 32 students. Point 2 about results and discussion is problems and experiment obstacles. Student and teachers' responses observation carried out by giving questionnaire to students and teacher of the obstacles that occur so that the experiment is not implemented. The results of teacher observation can be seen in Table 2. Laboratory management covers 6 aspects, namely planning, procurement, use, maintenance, inventory of tools and materials, and destruction of damaged tools and materials. The last point about results and discussion is students' response. The next stage is giving questionnaire to students. The number of students assembled was 64 people with random sampling techniques. The percentage of students who chose the answer yes and no can be seen in the following table 3. Next section about conclusions. Based on the results of research in Deli Serdang District High School that their area of chemistry laboratory has been suitable with BSNP standard, but implementation of chemical practicum has not been carried out properly because the laboratory is used a learning room and there is no laboratory assistant, so the tools and materials are not managed optimally. The last section about strength, weakness, and reference. Strength is the research. This article has presented the results of the questionnaire for each object under study, so that it can support other data and its validity is high. About weakness is this research has a weakness, namely it does not explain in detail how the observations are based on national education standards. And last, about reference is Namira, Fatia, and others 2020 Analysis of Constraint and Innovation of Chemistry Experiment Implementation in High School in Deli Serdang, Indonesia. Journal of Chemistry Education, Vol. 12 and page 106 until 115.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, my name is Reni, Widi, Astuti, and then my ID number is 34. How are you? I hope we are all in good health during this pandemic. And this meeting, the title of my presentation is Review Journal. Okay, did you know that about the structure when we review journal? Let me start with the first part. Okay, the first part, review journal. The title of the journal, Visualizing Solubilization by a Realistic Particle Model in Chemistry Education. Volume and page, volume 3, page 13 until 24, years of published, 2019, authors Antonella Di Vincenzo and Michael A. Florano. Reviewers, me, Reni, Widi, Astuti, and then keywords, chemistry education, intermolecular interaction, mixtures, molecular dynamics, particle model, and solubility. Okay, let's move on to abstract. The journal presents an application for the visualization of the mixing process of two different types of structureless interacting particle is presented. The application allows to demonstrate on a qualitative basis, as well as by quantitatively monitoring the time evolution of the fraction of aggregates of different size, that the information of a homogeneous mixture is the result of favorable solid-solvent interaction as well as by temperature. It is suggested that, along with the use of suitable macroscopic example, visualization by the present application are useful in elucidating concepts related to miscibility or solubility. The application is based on a two-dimensional realistic dynamic model where atoms mass because of their thermal in interaction potential energies and their trajectory are determined by solving numerically Newton laws according to a molecular dynamic or MD-SAM. Okay, the next point is introduction. The journal Visualizing Solubilization by a Realistic Particle Model in Chemistry Education was written by Antonella Di Vincenzo and Michael A. Floriano. Throughout my reading of this article, it became clear that it focused on the role of the particle model of matter extensively, used to interpret and visualize different kinds of chemistry process and phenomena for education purpose, also pointing out its shortcoming as a potential sort of misconception. Okay, let's move on to method. In this part, author explain and application are useful in elucidating concepts related to miscibility or solubility. He explained the MD simulation method. In the molecular dynamics method, a fixed number of atoms or molecules move in a given volume and behave a classical object. Their motion is the consequence of both thermal and interaction potential energies. This Java-based problem provides two-dimensional or three-dimensional classical molecular dynamics engines. In addition to ready-made example, the user can recite and customize new model or activities. In this part of the application, it is possible, for example, to calculate the Maxwell-Boltzmann speed and velocity distribution. Okay, next, result and discussion. Others began with explain about the present application has been designed to introduce the basic concept of the particle model of matter and, in particular, its dynamic properties. It has been pointed out elsewhere that using a realistic model for describing the motion of atom molecules, rather than using animation based on more or less arbitrary succession of still pictures, carries important advantage from an education viewpoint. With this in mind, as explained above, the application was designed as a realistic MD simulation in which simple structureless monoatomic particles move according to Newton's law of motion. Concepts related to solubility and the processes determining the formation of homogeneous or heterogeneous mixtures are very important in chemistry. In the case under consideration, the mixing process of particles of different types, in addition to parameters defining the identity of particle size and mass, the relevant variables are temperature and attractive drive parameter. As a consequence, the application was designed to focus on the latter. Okay, for the next, in this picture, the author explained the results reported in figure 4 demonstrate on a qualitative basis that when no interaction are present, two different substances will mix at any temperature because there is no relation for particles of one type to for regions rich of particles of the same type. This idea is a qualitative way of describing the spontaneous process which, from a state consisting of two separate A and B substances, leads to a homogeneous A or B mixture with a corresponding entropy increase. Okay, basic figure 5 or figure 6. The research report in figure 5 and figure 6 demonstrate the effect of introduction potential interaction energies between all particle pairs on the resulting mixture. Okay, in this part, figures 5 and then figure 6, the research reported in figure 5 and then figure 6 demonstrate the effect of introducing preferential interaction energies between all particle pairs on the resulting mixture. Okay, let's move on to the above discussion is further supported by the result reported in figure 7, where temperature was raised and the consequent dissolution of the aggregates formed at a lower temperature was obtained. Raising the temperature had the effect of shifting the balance between kinetic and potential energies in favor of the former. Okay, in summary, the author's opinion, the application here presented offers the opportunity of letting the student observe in an interactive fashion the basic submicroscopic details underlying a mixing process. It is possible to use the application at different school levels, from the simple qualitative observation of the dynamic configuration to gradual, more detailed semi-quantitative analysis, also making use of the time evolution of the fraction of the different aggregate species present in the mixture. Okay, let's move on to conclusion. Okay, in this part, In the journal, the conclusion of the author's study are presented. The particle model of matter is a powerful tool for describing the structure and the dynamic properties of matter at the submicroscopic level. With the present application, it is possible to demonstrate in acute effectivity why that the study of the dynamic behavior is very often crucial in the understanding of fundamental concepts in chemistry. Okay, let's move into strength and weakness. The first one, the application, here presented offers the opportunity of letting the students observe is an interactive fashion the basic submicroscopic details underlying a mixing process. Secondly, this journal provides a solution in visualizing solubilization by a realistic particle model in teaching chemistry. For the last, the journal also describes the feature of the program used in describe the visualizing solubilization by a realistic particle model. And the weakness, the first one, the dynamic illustration of the submicroscopic word generated by animation might be indistinguishable from those produced by a realistic simulation. And the last, the article does not provide information. The weakness from the application are useful in elucidating concepts related to miscibility or solubility. Okay, the last part is reference. This is the end of our presentation. To conclude, I would like to say that a journal review has several structures like the ones we have presented. Okay, thank you for your attention. Sorry there is a mistake. I am. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.